back, guys, to another video. This will be a little bit longer than like the 8.5 video I did the other day, just to get some quick news out. The Goodie box has landed. Full disclosure, I did cut it open, but I didn't open it all the way just to make it less awkward for camera. But here we go. So this is the box that Monkey Fab sent, and I'm really curious to see what's in here. It's got all of the things. As promised, there's a whirly bird in here. If I remember correctly, he said it was a 7875, which I'm not mad. Michael was telling me, in his opinion, this will work a lot better for the 5.3 that I got, and I don't doubt him. I mean, he builds this stuff for a living, and it looks like we got a little adapter flange here. So, looks like that's pretty much it. But I'm not complaining by any stretch of the imagination. I am super excited, and this definitely means that we are committed. Not that I wasn't committed before, but obviously when you do this sort of thing and somebody goes out of the way to give you stuff to support your channel and your build and all that, they always want to see it through to completion. So you don't want to be the kind of guy who talks in the game and never delivers. Fortunately for me, I've pretty much delivered up to this point. It's just life. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna get this up here for a second, so just bear with me. See if I can grab this old slightly loose bad boy. Set it in here, kind of see what we're working with. So that's more or less it. It's not too bad. It's actually fits in there pretty well. We'll have to figure out the logistics of it all, in its entirety. But I'm excited, man. This has never happened to me before. I'm sure, like a lot of you out there, like myself, you've probably been tinkering and wrenching on stuff for a long time, and very rarely, if ever, does somebody come out of the woodwork and say, "Hey, I got you. I believe in what you're doing, and here's a little something to help you along the way." So I'm really stoked. I really am. Like I said, the goal is to drive this car. We're going to drive it. The whole channel, if you will, and the whole mantra behind the car revolves around driving and going to all the places, or as many places as I can. Obviously, had I not gone off the deep end several years ago and left it as a basically stock rolling chassis that needed an engine and trans, I'd be a lot further along. Probably be driving it by now. It's what it is. But we're here. So I'll probably take or have like a, I don't know how to call it. If you're familiar with the Trans Am cars of the 70s, they were kind of like stock cars before they went way off the deep end, where they were, door slammer cars, full body cars, steel glass and everything, with big stupid engines in them, really aggressive tires, and they chased, European sports cars around the track. That's kind of the goal for this thing, with lots of Australian, Japanese tuner flair, not necessarily in the way of aero or anything, but just more, wheel fitment and ride height, tuning styles and power and all that stuff. So this 17875 may not seem like much, but remember here, we're a basically stock junkyard 5.3 with truck accessories on it, okay? And it's going to be a 6-speed T56, which, if you're not aware, unlike the T56 Magnums, the regular T56 doesn't have all that great of a case strength. So from my understanding, they're good to ride about 800-ish torque, depending on who you talk to and the weight of the car or whatever. And also, since we're dealing with, not even working man, a stay-at-home, part-time working man's budget, we're going to have to try to stay within the confines of as many things as we already have on hand. So if we were to say a cammed 5.3 with what probably is too much cam in it, but it's what I had, and this turbo with the transmission I already have that needs to be rebuilt and put back together with the stock GTO diff, if we were to say that all that is good for about 800 to 1,000 horsepower, then that's more than enough. Because remember, this isn't a powered clout chasing, Lambo killing, internet bragging rights kind of a build. This is simply to inspire other guys out there, just like myself, who have just been, kicking the can one too many years on something that is clearly important to them because they still have it. They just haven't seen it through. right? And I cannot stress it enough. That is the end goal for this car. Now, once it's all back together and running and driving, and I'm doing things with it, and we want to, turn it up a notch and go to the next level once we're established and maybe have some more support and a little bit more money to spend, sure. But the other thing I wanted to point out with this particular update is, how do we all end up here? And if you're watching this video, you know exactly how we ended up here. What started out as something minor, and believe it or not, back when this car was basically stock with it had a LS3 swap in it and a cam, aftermarket radiator, long tubes, full exhaust, it just had a bad lifter. I had gotten out of the Navy at the time, like most people got out of the military, don't have a lot of money, the family needed, so the car got parted out because the family needed. And instead of staying rational and be like, no big deal, I'll part it out to this level and then I'll be able to get, these things more easily so I can put it back and enjoy it again. We started talking about cages and started talking about chutes and started talking about, all this power and mini tubs, this and that. And here we are 8 years or more later, and it still ain't running. That's how we end up here. And so it's okay to stay modest, reasonable, achievable with your goals, okay? Because that prevents stuff like this from happening all these years later. And now you got this car that's on jack stands and basically lives here that isn't doing anything. And that defeats the whole purpose of this hobby, is to have something that's not doing anything. Because to be honest, once it's done, it might not be the prettiest thing in town. It definitely won't be the fastest. Well, I don't know, around here, it'll be pretty quick for sure. But what difference does it make if you can't enjoy it? Something to think about. Now, outside of the GTO, I have a plan for the EJ, as you can see here. I don't want to really touch on it or talk about it too much yet, because it's not necessarily, it's just not a priority right now. Right now, the priority is that 426 cubic inch, what will be Hellcat blower swapped Durango, which seems like a lot for a family car. And it is, but it's more or less a forever car. And so, short of it being paid off here, if it isn't already, and doing all of the maintenance and updates that need to be done on a car that's pushing 300,000 miles, its long-term role is to do everything all the other cars can't. Towing as much as it can, probably more, upgrading the suspension to, the hitch if need be, taking the family all over God and country, and being the fallback car for when the range needs work, when these are acting up, when, Subaru needs to be towed somewhere. It's going to do all those things, because I'm not trying to buy a diesel pickup anytime soon. So building a reasonable built 7-passenger car that can do literally everything, and spend a huge focus on the heart of it, the engine, which I'll go over in pretty deep detail, give you all the prices and what I traded for what, and how I built that when I get the engine back from the machine shop, which will definitely be after the holiday, probably the first of the year. That'll probably be the first video for the channel for 2025, is basically winding down the engine assembly process of the Durango and work on the tuning and, just the side ahead. Because the sooner I get that thing back together, the sooner I can get to the Subaru engine and make a plan for it. Now, the guys over at Monkey Fab said they have another turbo that will fit well for that 2.5 that I have. But the first couple of installments on that project are simply going to be machining, block architecture, like the good and the bad of the split case design, in upgrading a lot of stuff that hasn't been upgraded on there already, provided it is straight. And I think it is. Stanley thinks it is, so it should be fine. They have all the proper stuff at the machine shop to take care of a machine, an EJ block, the special plating and mounts and all that stuff. I talked to them about that yesterday. So for all of you like Subaru diehards out there, don't worry. They have messed with enough EJ blocks. They know what they're doing. They have all the proper, special plating and all that stuff for a split block over there. So it'll be fine. Okay. And then just kind of take one project at a time. The GTO will get continuously worked on, but it's kind of like priority one, backup family hauler, start on the, the Subaru, which is like a secondary family hauler, and then in between work on the GTO as we can. The next thing for the GTO, since it's as far as I can get it without doing any fab work, is the fab work. Luckily though, because, this looks like a 2.5 or 3 inch outlet here on the hot side, it'll be a lot easier to fab up with the 2.5. And somebody did that already. I bought there was $50 for the manifolds. They already had the V-bands put on both sides. It should be exceptionally easier to make the little crossover pipe and get a wastegate and all that put together. And then I should be able to run, once I figure out how this is going to be oriented, to make something to go down and around and between the frame rails here, back about to where the stock exhaust exited the car. Make that removable so you can still service everything back there and go back into the Y pipe style that it had from factory. Like I said, I'm going to drive this thing. I'm going to pull the full exhaust back on it. We're not doing fender exits and hood exits, and that's all fine and cool. If that's your cup of tea, man, more power to you. No offense. But if we're legitimately going to be honest with ourselves and start building cars the way that they were built years ago, rebuild them with the idea of actually driving them more than 2-3 months out of the year or less, depending on where you live at, we gotta do it right. Okay, so everything that I have fuel system wise, max is about 1,000 with a forced induction application. I'll need to get upgraded injectors, but I mean, everything from LSA to ZR1, ZL1, and various other factory GM injectors will be plenty for what I need. And because of that, it should be plenty affordable to get a hold of as well. And just build it, man. We're just going to build it. I'm excited. I'm grateful, super grateful. I do need to get a air-to-air charge air cooler, not an intercooler. If you are remotely familiar with big diesel engines, you understand why that's such a pet peeve term. Charge air coolers, what they're called. Intercoolers are before between stages of turbochargers or any kind of forced induction unit. Scientific pet peeve. Anyway, rant over. We gotta get a charge air cooler. There's a guy near me that has a pretty stout one that'll mount right about where I need it to, in front of the radiator. I have to reorient the radiator, get all that mounted up. I'll try to do that over the winter. Get the coolant system completed so I can run the car for longer than 2-3 minutes at a time. Redo the oil lines for this particular turbo. I might use a different front cover that has the mounts welded in it, just because it looks cleaner and less likely to start a fire. And see if we can get this thing basically to the point to where we could almost tune it where it sits, short of the transmission. Because I have a drive line, I have the adapter for the one-piece drive shaft. The half shafts are in place, brakes are on the car. I literally need a clutch and transmission, and the car will be drivable. Well, clutch, transmission, wheels, and tires, but I mean, wheels and tires are relative, to be able to drive the car outside of the coolant system and the accessories, which I'm going to try to do over the winter. So I don't know if I'll make a video with all that. I might make 1 or 2, depending on how much progress I make. But obviously during the holiday season, the focus is family, as it should be for you. And try to make 25 mean something, man. I really mean that. We'll do an update when we get the engine back for the Durango. We'll do maybe another one for any major progress I make on the GTO. Outside of that, I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, Monkey Fab, for doing this. You didn't have to do that, and that means a lot to me. But now we're committed more than before to see this thing do something. So hopefully you guys enjoy my rant. I promise there'll be more wrenching and less ranting here soon. It's a slow process. It's been 8 years now, so let's try to get wrapped up in less than 1. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you guys around.